This is the high frequency mid-range we'll be taking out. Also, we call them middlers. Comparing it to the tweeter, this is a pretty big tweeter. We need to make a bracket that this will mount into so that we can center these things up. And for that, we'll be using the laser. I need to scan these in to the computer and replicate them. To scan these in, we'll be using an Epson flatbed scanner. Place our speaker on top, scan the image in. That's what our speaker looks like. The next part of the process is opening our Amidine software. Drag in our picture scan. As you can see, it's way bigger than it needs to be. Scale this down. We have to find the right size. So like we could trace this out and draw it, but that doesn't mean it's gonna be to scale. Looking at this, we can get a good idea that the outside of this basket is in the scan. Using our calipers, we can see the maximum size of this speaker, which is about 3.37 inches. This is the scale it needs to be, and that gets us right where we want to be. Now we just have to trace this object inside of the software and recreate it. These shapes over here on the side are what's going to allow us to do that. Measure for our screw hole. And there we have our basic shape of the factory speaker drawn in. We just need to now add in our hole for the tweeter. Using the calipers, line it up with our XY. And there we have it. We have a Mazda tweeter mount. Here is our piece. Our tweeter snaps in. Dude, we almost, look at that. That's how tight that is. That's laser. Gotta love it. We're still gonna put our back piece on because it's gonna be mounted like this. We don't want it falling out. If you ever get anything with acrylic and it has paper like this on it and you're trying to figure out how to get the paper off, grab another piece of acrylic. Acrylic doesn't scratch acrylic. And it makes it super easy to get this off. Even if you're gonna scratch it. Most of the time you're gonna be getting two of something, so use one to clean the other one off. No scratches. Woo. Now there is a left and right side because it has the two notches here and the one notch here. Test fit it on the door to make sure you get the right side up. Open our bag and grab our little screws. And there we have it. We have one tweeter done. I'm gonna get this over to Fernando so he can get it in the door.
In this particular car, I like to put one screw in the top just to hold the bracket. Not all the way. And then I can run my speaker wire through this notch. Speaker is mounted, zip tie, speaker is plugged in. For this tweeter, we're gonna install a little bit of foam. If you're wondering which one is positive and which one is negative, black with the gray is gonna be our negative.
Fernando just informed me he's done with the door. Let's take a closer look. The 7-inch is mounted in place with those cool brackets that we made. As you can see, it's a nice flush look. It goes on there. Looks really good. I love the carbon look of the cone. He's added in our connectors for the mid-range as well as the tweeter. The tweeter is also mounted in place with our connectors on them. This is what I was talking about. They have the areas here for that one end, and on the opposite end it just has a single notch. Make sure you get that correct. He added in some foam to push the tweeter sound into the door. Now he can get this back on and finish it up and head over to the passenger side.
And just like that, this door is done.
For dash kit in this, we'll be using the 997506 from Metra. It has a nice fit and finish to it. Inside the pocket, if you're gonna do a floating radio or a single din, it has the mounting brackets along with some clips to hold it in place. The single din ISO mount bracket as well, and their brackets to hold the radio in. Anytime you get a dash kit, I strongly recommend going through the owner's manual to figure it out. Metra does an exceptional job of walking you through the disassembly process of the dash. And this one is no different. There is a ton of stuff to take apart on this. We need to get the air conditioner out so we can install that into the kit. Let's hop into the vehicle and we'll get the radio out. According to the instructions, the first step is removing this area underneath the steering wheel, the knee buster. It doesn't have any screws, it just unclips from the top and then slides forward. We have a piece of metal underneath here that has 4 Phillips screws. This is the piece here. It has one little leg on the back that attaches it into the dash. Step 4 on this is the real kicker for sure. Looking at the side of the dash, the radio climate control panel, from the underneath the steering column opening, remove one 10mm bolt from the side of the radio chassis. Basically in this area here, but located up in the dash and over, is a 10mm bolt.
I see the bracket, but there's no screw in there.
We might be lucky. Somebody might have already had the radio out and removed the screw. We'll move on to the next step, is removing these 2 side pieces here next to the radio. Start at the bottom and pull it forward. It has a couple clips on it. On the sides of the radio here are a couple screws. We should be able to put our fingers here on the sides, give it a slight pull, and the radio will come right out. If that bolt was in there, what would happen is you'd sit here and you'd be pulling and nothing would happen. Naturally, the radio isn't going to come out that far, so it is going to be a pain in the butt to get in here and unplug this thing. Join me back at the bench and we'll take this apart and get it mounted into our dash kit. The first step we need to do on the dash kit is get rid of this center brace here. For that, we'll use some cutters. We just need to rough cut it first just to get it out. You can see it leaves a little leg. Grind it down. There's a little tooth on the back here that needs to stay, so it needs to have like a T shape to it. This is that little tooth there. This needs to stay because it is going to line up our mounting brackets. These have a left and a right, and they have that same L shape, and they snap in like that. Grabbing the Kenwood radio, slide this over into place, slowly pushing it down. The Metra kit doesn't give you any screws because there's 2 different styles of screws that we use. We use a machine thread or a coarse thread. On the factory radio itself, it will have machine threads. Kenwood uses machine threads, and there is a bag in the box when you buy the radio. Line the radio up and add in your screws. You may have to loosen it up and adjust it. Comes with 6 screws, 2 on top, 1 on the bottom. If you want all 4, steal 2 off of your factory radio. Check the alignment around your corners and your gapping. If it's good, make sure the screws are nice and tight. Flipping the radio over, there's 4 Phillips screws we need to remove to get the air conditioning off. Once removed, set the radio aside, you're done with it. With 2 screws in, and I do strongly recommend using a regular screwdriver, don't use a drill. Flip it over, make sure that it lined up right. It is. We'll add in our last 2 screws. For the most part, this is done. However, it's not done for me. Manufacturers now are using a lot of these little flags to denote what a common colored RCA does. In this case, these are for the cameras. I like to take a Sharpie and write what they are on the RCAs. The reason for that is it might be a year or 2 or 3 down the road, and they might pull this radio out, decide they want to add a backup camera or a side camera or something like that, and these little legs may have fallen off. I also like to zip tie these up into a bundle. That way I don't have 4 skinny 18 gauge wires flopping around in the dash that could possibly get cut or snagged or ripped off the radio if someone goes to remove it and they get caught in something. Kind of a strength in numbers type thing. I don't like zip tying the USBs all the way down, but I do add one here closest to the radio, about 1 inch away, just so that the metal is not the only point in case somebody does something weird. I don't want to rip out of the radio. This is prepped and ready to go back into the car. We're not, of course, to that point yet, so I'm going to set this aside.